Welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about Shoah, the 9.5 hour epic documentary by Claude Lanzmann. Because it's a big film and it took a long time to watch, this is the only video I'll be doing this week, probably. I mean, it may change my mind, do some later on in the week, but I doubt it, because this was quite an effort to watch, because it's obviously, the Holocaust is very disturbing. I don't think I've really got the energy to go do another video at the moment, because this one took a lot of effort to do the watching and then just to sit through it. So I very much doubt. As you see, I haven't put the background up or anything either. I'm just trying to do a simple video. Shoah is very disturbing. I've seen Shoah before. I saw Shoah about 10 years ago. So I thought it wouldn't be as difficult second time round, and it was probably more difficult second time round. It's definitely a film I'm going to try and keep watching every 10 years or something, because I think it's important to keep watching a film that's important. I think it's better to actually have it in your head, even if you don't want to be watching it all the time, because it's very, disturbing. But it's also a film that should be shown this to schools so that you can see what real evil is, what real genocide actually is. People should know this film. This film is just, it's, maybe I'm going on TV once or twice, but film fans know what it is, but I don't think, and people know the word Shoah because it's Schindler's List, the Shoah Foundation and things like that. It's in the general consciousness, but I don't think many people have actually seen the film, because it really is one of those films you don't forget once you've seen it. And it's definitely a film it should be shown in schools. I mean, I think it really should be shown in schools everywhere. Like, here's Shoah Week, you have to watch this at some point in your school life. Maybe not too early, maybe wait till you're about 15 or something. But give people an idea of what genocide and what fascism actually is, and what, how this thing is completely indefensible, and just show how horrible human beings can be to each other. This has been the most extreme version, which is the Aryans wanting the pure race and killing all the Jews in Europe. This is like the most extreme version of the kind of evil human beings are capable of. But you see it throughout history. I mean, the Jews have been persecuted throughout history. Other cultures have been persecuted. You see any war, people treat each other horribly. People are allowed to starve, or burned, or shot. It happens throughout history. It's a human, part of the human condition that I think most people aren't very comfortable with. Because you like to see the better side of human nature. And this shows you what we're like at the worst. This film especially, because it shows you how systemised, evil actually can be. And evilness is just, evilness is like a horrific idea, and then you see it how it progresses throughout World War II, how it develops, and how it's allowed to develop, and the methodology of how it developed, and the consequence of it all. So it's 9 hours long, 9.5 hours long. It's very thorough. It's cut into two parts, this first era and second era. So the first era is about 4.5 hours long, and the second era is 4 hours 50. That's going by the my Big Sick. This is the Master Cinema edition, which also has Shoah. I already did this in a video before. Has a booklet with interviews, and there's lots of information. And you also get the last of the Unjust, and Sobibor, Castle Report, Business from Living. I've done Last of the Unjust and these other documentaries already in a video a few years ago, so I'd recommend you try and watch that as well. I think it's a good video, but Shoah was the one I was avoiding when I got that box set, because it was like, I knew it was going to be a tough watch again, even though I thought it would be easier, and it wasn't. I thought you know, I thought I'd be able to sit through it a little bit easier, but nah, it's the actual, you know, maybe getting older and maybe a bit less glib makes it harder to take now. But also I just think the first time around you're hit so much with the information. Like, you already knew about the Holocaust, but you're hitting so much with the details. It feels this oppressive force of awfulness of what humans can be, just bearing down on you for like 9 hours. That's, even the first time around it took me quite a few viewings to watch as well. The second time around you notice the details more, and it feels more disturbing because you're approaching a more human level. The second time around I think more than you were the first time. First time you're looking at the overall view of the thing. You didn't know exactly where it was going to go as a documentary. The second time around I knew it was going to go as a documentary. I remembered bits of it, but there's other stuff obviously I'd forgotten. But there was some things that just stuck out to me from the first view, and there's other bits that I vaguely remembered, but they didn't quite had the impact the first time round that it seemed to have a much bigger impact the second time round. So there's that, but yeah, I mean, this time round I think I saw it in like 6 sessions really. It was like 2 hours, and because it was like half hour, 45 minutes extra over the 4 hours of each era, I did like half hour, 45 minute bits in the middle as well. So like 2 hours, half hour, 2 hours. The next time it was 2 hours, 45 minutes, 2 hours. I don't think I could really sit through it because it was just so disturbing. It was like each time your brain would try and stop focusing on it so it could have a rest for a minute or two just to absorb what you were watching, because you needed to have some breathing space. And even then I would pause it sometimes in those 2 hours and just go for a drink or something, or go to the toilet or something, just to get like a few minutes away from the film, because it was so disturbing. I could not imagine watching this in the cinema. I think you would be like monumentally depressed. I mean, the only difference between this time and the last time, because I knew what was coming. First time round I remember feeling really depressed every time I watched any of them. This time round I'm not depressed as much, but I find it actually tougher going during the actual viewings. Like last time I could watch it easier, but at the end of it I was like, ugh. This time I found it much tougher to watch every time. But at the end of it I knew what had happened from the last viewing of it, so it was a just different viewing. But my god, it's disturbing. It's really disturbing. I mean, this video will come out when Lanzmann's final film released from our cinema. It's called Four Sisters. It's released from when I'm filming this next week, but it's released when it goes up. It will be released that week. So I've ordered that, so I should be watching that soon. And you know, I want to watch it, but also I'm kind of dreading it at the same time. And I've lost my place, but it doesn't matter. I think I'm going to lose my place a few times during this video. So when it goes up, this final documentary will be out. So Lanzmann made a career based on covering Holocaust in detail, and what he's really good at is talking to people and prodding them with questions, but not. He's always off to the side of the camera. He's never the focus, and he lets them talk for themselves. He's not trying. He'll prod them when he needs to prod them, but he tries. He's not a director scared of letting someone talk for 20 minutes. You know. He's okay with that, because if there's a good story he can put images over it to cut out the bits that he doesn't need. But he's very good at letting people talk and feel very natural, and you can get a sense of a person through what they say rather than him telling you this person's horrible or this person is traumatized. No, you get it through them talking over a long period of time. That's why it's 9 hours long. It's not like fact. It's you've been told just the experience orally all the time, and it's the testimony basically. So it needs time, so you need to sit back and let the testimony soak in. And that's what's disturbing about the second time round, really, because you're really feeling the horrors a lot. I found a lot were emotionally the second time round, but also I would get angry at the people who were on the German side who were either oblivious or, you know, they didn't care, like they'd moved on, they didn't care, they weren't going to deal with it anymore. Or even people who gave the information, but you think, shouldn't you feel more guilty about this? This was something horrific you're involved in. The annoyance at the Germans who were involved in this, not annoyance, the anger at the Germans, but the annoyance at the characters, the people talking, and some of the things they say that are just like, you would go, that's so wrong. That continues throughout the film, and it never abates. There's always some other guy who is going to come up and talk, and you're going to really, really loathe them. I mean, there was a guy towards the end who helped run the ghettos, and he seemed to be as clueless as possible about where this was going, why it was evil. He said it wasn't very good, it was inhuman, but it never seemed to ever get the overall horrors of it in the way that other people did. I mean, there was a guy called Karski, who was also the folks at Karski Report, who went and testified about what was going on, and he went into the ghetto and it really affected him. And before that he'd heard about it, but it's because you hear a story of something, but if you don't actually see, you're not going to be, it's an abstract. So it goes from an abstract to something that's very emotional for him. Yeah, there's other guys who are like the guy who ran the train system, who's saying, I didn't know, I was just running the train. He was like, I just don't believe it. There seems to be this, there's no way you couldn't know. And there's also horrible elements like the fact that Polish resistance wouldn't give the Jews in the ghetto guns to defend themselves during the Warsaw Uprising. And it's like, just anti-Semitism. I mean, the Polish come off really badly in this film. I mean, because it was, a lot of it was set in Poland, some of the more horrific elements come from the Poles who were, because the first era goes into more detail about the build-up and the places around the camps, the Treblinka, and the people who were helping transport, the people who were working the side of the tracks, you know, the kind of Poles who lived near Treblinka, and what they thought and all that stuff, as well as the stories of the people or their experiences in the camps. And it would make your blood boil watching some of these Poles talk oblivious. It was like, yeah, we had sympathy, but we could happily see them go as well. They didn't like the Jewish people there, or some of them didn't. Some of them were racist, some of them weren't. But a lot of the time there was a cluelessness, a moral cluelessness about stuff. They weren't going to help them. They were just going to sit back and say, it wasn't our fault. No one was ever going to jump out and actually do anything about it. They were just going to let this happen, a few miles from where they lived, and they weren't going to do anything. Because that's a shame. Some of them liked the Jewish people, some of them didn't, but there's just a creepiness to it, because it's self-serving. It's like, we're not the villains, they're the villains, we just let it happen, and they just don't. There's just something about them that's really, a lot of time is really creepy. It's because it's about human nature, how people let things happen, and because it's going to put them out to do anything about it, they won't do anything about it. It's just basic human nature, and to see that in such a stark circumstance where these people needed help, and these people, when the Poles didn't do anything about it, they were a bit sentimental about themselves, about how difficult things were for them and all the rest of it, but they weren't going to do anything about all this mass extermination of Jews. They were not going to do anything about it. And it's horrific. There's a sequence near the end of the first era where a guy who was a kid during the war, and he used to sing a lot on the river, because he had to do a lot of jobs in the river and things. He used to sing a lot and everyone remembered him, so he went back, because he survived it, he went back years later with Lanzmann and just met the people who stood back and did nothing. And you can see him watching them. He's got a smile on his face, a kind smile. Basically, this must have been horrific for this guy, just to sit and listen to these people talk. And they've been sentimental about it. Oh, it's nice to see you lived, and that's good on type of thing. But they don't care. They're trying to look good for the camera. They're coming to church. because that Christianity is their religion. They're in church and they're oblivious to their own feelings, the feelings of this other guy. They just want to look good and say, oh, we were good people. And then if some guy comes out and says something really horrible about about why the Jews should have got it because they helped kill Christ or something, and it's like, oh my god, he actually went and said that. That's like, oh, you just can't believe he said that. And it's that underlying racism that's there, and you just feel it in a lot of the interactions like this. Like, and there was other people who were, say they were warning the Jews about where they were going by doing this and stuff. And they're trying to explain it as if they were trying to help them, but tell them what was waiting for them. And it was just sadism. It was just horrific sadism. That happens all the time. And just talking about the camps and how they would actually try and fool the people in trains by making sure the trains ran in time, like it was every 2 to 3 hours. And over that time, people went in, some had a haircut, so they could use to keep the hair, into the gas chambers straight away. They were had to lose all their clothes, they were naked, waiting naked, so a lot of the women were waiting naked, knowing they were going to die. And the men went in first so they wouldn't fight. And they had to get them all in. They get rid of the bodies, they burn the bodies, get rid of the clothes, so the next train would come in and it would happen again and again, all over, on routine, like every few hours. And all these like Jewish people had to get rid of the bodies and burn them, or to help the Germans burn them, in fear of death. So they were in this machinery of death they could not escape from. And it's just horrific, just the mechanism of all, just like, this has to be efficient, it has to be 3 hours, and then the next day be out, and the next lot come in. And it was just awful. They're just talking about people relieve themselves waiting because they were so stressed. And they're basically turning people into animals before they die for the slaughter. And apparently it stunk, everything stunk, it was horrible, and the SS people did not care. There's lots of people in the camps who are helping run it. And they were active, they were trying to be nice to the Jews, but it's like, you're in a death camp. You're guilty. You're just guilty. It's like, if you're there and you're not, and you actually go along with it as a German, you're guilty. So, it's just like really disturbing. There's tons of disturbing moments. There's the one big thing I remember from the last time I saw it was the story of the barber, who was talking about how he had to built in 2 minute blocks where people in 2 minutes later had been gone again, and we had to get rid of some of the hair and try and not warn them what's going to get killed because of the fear of death. And you had to make it sound good, and this is this thing I had to do every day. They weren't allowed to talk to each other. They weren't allowed to, the guards were always paranoid about them, always watching them, and so it was, people were dying, but it was a living hell for the people who were having to keep this thing going, and they were having to do that and be like the people who had survived to tell the tale of what actually happened. And it's just horrific. There's another story about, they set up this block in Auschwitz, to set up this area for the Czech Jews who were in it, who were given a special area, and they weren't killed instantly. So for 3 months they were left there. They still worked, but they weren't getting starved or getting better food. So they write to the people in the ghetto in Warsaw to say, or the ghettos anyway where their relatives were, saying, no, it's not that bad here, it's been overrated. So it'd be easier so that they could bring these people in and kill them. And then they killed these this group of people, Czech Jews, after 3 months, just brutally, like beating them up, putting them in the gas chamber, killing them after they've been fake nice for 3 months. That's so awful to hear about. And the whole thing about the ghetto as well, talking about the ghetto, how they survived the ghetto, how horrible it was, stunk, how people were starving in the streets, and it's like, and there's influx of different people from different backgrounds there as well, and it's just hard to keep track of who's coming where and when, because the Germans had it all planned, and it was just so cold-blooded how they did it, that it's just brutal to watch. You just feel yourself horrified by humanity, horrified by the nature of this mass murder, because it's literally, it's been pre-planned so much, and the people who were involved, who say, "No, what I'm doing with me, I was proven that it wasn't my fault at the trials and stuff," you're thinking, it still was your fault. You know, it really was. I mean, if you're part of the mechanism that keeps this thing running, and you're getting paid for it, and the rest of it, you're guilty. And it's just horrifying watching those Germans speak, because it makes your skin crawl. And even watching, you just see what happens to these people, like, because every time you see anybody talking about it, you just see how traumatized they are. Even now, a lot of them try and repress, a lot of the Jews who survived try and repress their memories of it, because it's too painful to live with. Or even people who helped the Jews, they try and repress it as well, because it's too painful just to live with all the time. They have to try and block it out and just not think about it, because that'll make their lives hell. And you can see the emotion in their faces as they talk about it. They're crying, and it's so moving but so horrifying, because you're only getting a small percentage of how horrifying it actually was for them, and how the Germans were actually, the Nazis were actually brutalising them even before they killed them. I mean, they were in trains that for days, trapped together, lots of people dying, so they'd have dead people in there eventually as people died out of the conditions. Winter or summer, they weren't getting water, they weren't getting anything, they were getting starved to death in the ghettos. People who go out there, anyone who worked in the death camps at a certain point to survive, they were basically getting starved too. And it was like, and if the trains stopped coming, then it meant the people who worked in the concentration camps were in danger. So they have to keep the lines coming, and it's just like, it puts them in a lot of mind games with themselves later on, as they try and justify surviving, because the Nazis really made it difficult for them to ever escape from the feeling of how awful humanity is, and how awful the things have made these people do to survive. Because anyone who survived is going to have a lot of trauma, so they won't talk about it, because it's just there, it's just horrific. And it's just something no human should go through. But it was systematically planned by the Nazis, and it's like, this is like so shameful. And that's what you leave with watching now, is how shameful the whole situation was, how horrific life can be if people have a horribly racist idea and then have the willpower to actually go through with something completely immoral, and no one will help the victims of it. If people just stand back and say, "No, not do me, sorry, no." If there's a psychopath, say, in a nation, and then a lot of weakness within that nation and within nations it conquers, it shows you how horrible things can be. So it's just this tragedy, and how people are put in situations where they have to watch people murdered on a daily basis, their own tribe murdered like en masse by the thousands every day. And the people who are waiting in the ghettos know it's coming for them. And how do you survive? They get starved, how do you survive that? I mean, it's completely horrific. That's why it has to be seen. Like, if you watched this and you haven't seen Shoah, you have to see it. It's really important to see it. It's one of the films everyone has to see at least once. And it's going to be disturbing, it's going to be horrific, it's going to be one of the most difficult things to watch, but you have to see it to have a proper view of humanity at its worst. And one other thing I say is, you don't see any footage, you see like, it's talking heads, and it's footage of what things look like now. There's no footage, old historical footage, to try and make you try and exploit the situation. It's what's going on in your head of what they're telling you, it's watching their faces as they tell you. That's where the power comes from. So there's no jazzy, show-offy film techniques. No, it's people's faces talking. And that's what's so good about this film, and what's so important about the film. I'm not sure what else to say of this film. It's like, I spent a lot of time watching it, but it's an important film. You have to experience it for yourself, really. You really do. I mean, there's lots of stuff I have not talked about that are really haunting, that you need to see the person talk about it. There's quite a few moments people break down that I have not discussed that are really shocking. And there's quite a lot of moments that are really disturbing that I may have covered a little bit of, but there's lots of... the details really make it the horrific situation. So, yeah, just see it as an astonishing film. It's one of the most important films ever made, and it should be shown in schools. It really should be. I mean, the fact that it's not is an abomination. Well, I hope you... I'm not sure if you enjoyed that. I hope you made it through this. I'll be back probably next week, because I just don't want to do another video this week unless I perk up after a few days, because this is pretty draining to watch. I'm going to try and do a few more videos, but these kind of things like Saw and Pity and things as well, to try and cover this era of documentaries in the World War II, because there's lots of interesting documentaries around, and I don't think they get covered as much as they should be. So I'll see you next time.